Hello, everyone. Welcome to Authenticate 2020, and thanks for joining this session on end-to-end passwordless for hybrid deployments. Organizations are rapidly moving to transform the way they do business by connecting everything digitally in order to be competitive in the market. It is more apparent than ever that to be successful, they need to provide services online, they need to provide access to business applications and data from anywhere, from any device, and anytime. With the pandemic we all are going through, this has been accelerated for all the organizations as more and more workforce is working remotely. The reality is that most SaaS applications are still protected with password only. And we all know that passwords are prone to man-in-the-middle attack and create a user frustration as they are required to be complex day by day. This drives the cost of password management very high and also degrades user experience as well. FIDO-based authentication is driving the passwordless as it addresses many of the challenges we have with passwords. In this session today, RSA and VMware will discuss multiple approaches to an enterprise-wide passwordless implementation and what to look for in an IAM solution that facilitates this journey. So before we deep dive into the session, let us do a quick introduction. My name is Shashank Rajvanshi. I am part of product management for identity and access assurance at RSA and driving modern authentication strategy and roadmap. I'm very pleased to welcome Brad Doctor, Senior Director of Security from VMware, and would like him to do a quick introduction. Brad.
All right, thanks, Shashank. Glad to be here. I lead security architecture and engineering for VMware. Our mission is to protect VMware itself. And so when we're talking to you today, it's from the perspective of what we've done at VMware for VMware. So it's been a great partnership with RSA and FIDO as well, and excited to be here.
Thanks, Brad. As part of digital transformation, most of the organizations are taking the journey to the cloud. And while more and more workforce is working remotely, strong authentication without depending on passwords become very important, not only for making sure user is who they claim to be while accessing business applications, but also for managing their credentials without depending on passwords. Like when you're registering first time, your authenticator, when your authenticator is lost and needs replacement. So we all know VMware is on the forefront of adopting new technologies and providing best experience to its customers and workforce. So let us hear first from Brad on VMware's passwordless initiatives for its workforce, different approaches VMware has taken and the driver behind it, and also hear from him some of the key learnings and why they chose RSA to support this initiative. So Brad, over to you.
You bet. So, first, why mess with passwords, right? They've been around forever. Everyone, we still use them every day. Websites you go to outside of the company and your own company as well. The reality is securing anything with a password is just about impossible today. Between the number of passwords that have been dumped, right, the odds of selecting a good one are very low. And it's just a matter of time. Any service that's been exposed to the internet, in our experience, it's just a matter of time before it's compromised in some way. And so removing the ability to use passwords is, from an InfoSec perspective, a very good thing, but it's also a very, very good experience for the end user experience, much better, in fact. And so in the case of VMware, we want to deliver a delightful experience to our colleagues that was also the most secure we possibly could. And we started with the very first thing, passwords, getting rid of passwords, right? And so architectural principle at VMware is that a password is not an acceptable form of authentication at any time for any reason. Simple as that. And so it's important for us to look at our tool set and lead that, right? Show what could be done with what we've got, in partnership with RSA as well. And we did that for 34,000 employees. Now, when COVID hit, we all went remote and, inside of a weekend, and, it was fairly seamless. The biggest issue we had were folks who had never worked remotely before. They didn't have home office, didn't have their equipment, and so on. But because of what we'd built to be self-service and passwordless, they're able to get up and running, within a day or two. So it was very, very low impact to the company. And at the same time, we're able to provide that unified experience across, all devices. I'm on a device here. It's got SIEM access as my phone. The credentials I use are the same type of credential. Again, no passwords, and it works very well. At the end of the day, our productivity for the past couple of quarters for software delivery have been at a record high. And this is something that we actually talked about in our earnings call 2 quarters in a row. And so it's worked out and it continues to work out very, very well. So when we started, it's kind of like any typical company starting, where you got to start from somewhere, right? And so we had Active Directory passwords, we had systems joined to the domain, we had onboarding challenges. You had to come into office and be onboarded, like the typical stuff. And our version of MFA at the time was a simple one-time password, just a very simple token. And we actually observed a situation where those OTPs were actually being replayed. They weren't being intercepted by anything sophisticated other than a very good phishing site, but they were being intercepted and reused before they were ever used. And so they were, completely failing. And that's when we realized that we really had to change even our passwordless approach at that time. And so when you look at what we built, we use VMware Workspace ONE, to access, but also for management of all endpoints, the entire fleet, whether it's a laptop or a mobile device, it doesn't matter. Workspace ONE is able to manage the entire fleet in the same way. Again, over 30,000 users over a 4-month period, right? And at this point, the authentication flow is very simple. We start with a certificate. That's the preferred and normal path. From there, we go into a token. It could be FIDO, it could be RSA, it could be whatever token we're supporting. And finally, we'll drop down to a push authentication or MFA if that's the last factor that's available. But it's done in sort of a flow, right? So certificates first, tokens, and then thereafter. But at no point do we use a password. At no point. The whole thing is also opt-in, as you can see. And so what that means is we initially, from a birthright perspective, send what's called a magic link to a user. And that's sort of in the moment, like you're on the phone, okay, I'm going to send you this link, click on the link, okay, off you go, self-provision. So very simple. And then the actual authentication requirements themselves can be granular, and it can be contextual as well. For instance, an endpoint that maybe isn't quite healthy, perhaps instead of allowing them to use a certificate, will require a push authentication or maybe a FIDO token, right? But it's that in the moment contextual sort of risk-based authentication flow. Very important. Now, the benefits. So this is where the rubber meets the road. User satisfaction is far, far higher. We don't allow passwords outside of the network at all. Even inside of the network, more and more passwords are less and less used by your typical user. IT administrators, command line, that sort of thing, that's still there, of course, right? We acknowledge that. But from a typical day-to-day perspective, hardly any use of passwords at all, anywhere at this point. Friction, our password reset interval is 180 days, going up from there. And so what we end up seeing is most people don't even know what their password is because they never use it, which creates a support issue, oddly, or not oddly, I guess. But when it's time to reset the password, per regulatory kind of thing, people don't know what even password was, and so they end up calling the help desk and get it reset, and off they go. So that's how little they use the password, right? And then the root of trust on unmanaged devices. This is where it gets interesting because we do have the unmanaged path. We do have people in the field. We do have a need for this, but we're all able to keep those users of the access at sort of arm's length. No one has direct access to the network necessarily, but more importantly, their applications are not on the network. They're accessed through an API. And the API, of course, is authenticated, and it's authenticated every single time you access the API. So it works out very well from a security perspective, but also from a usability perspective, even in an unmanaged context. And as I mentioned earlier, the whole COVID situation, 1 weekend, we went remote. One of my senior folks actually puts it very well. He said, we gained over 30,000 offices in 1 weekend, right? From a risk perspective, that's effectively what happens. And we designed the colleague experience to work and be secured from any location, right? Any device. Shashank, started with any, and it certainly has worked out. All right, with that, I'll hand it over to Shashank for his section.
Thank you, Brett, for sharing the valuable insights and trusting RSA for your modern authentication needs, including passwordless journey. And like you said, it's glad to see how the productivity has improved, because the technology is a means to an end, and I think what we are trying to get is get to improve the productivity and give best user experience what we can offer to our workforce and customers. So let me take a brief talk about what organizations should be looking at their identity and access assurance needs and how RSA is helping them. So while organizations are taking journey to the cloud, they should be able to extend their current IAM investments and be able to offer modern authentication capabilities without requiring much disruption to their existing applications and integrations in place. Like as you saw from what Brad talked about with VMware, they are using the traditional deployment which we have in RSA Secure ID Access, which is Authentication Manager, and then they extended that for offering modern authentication method to their customers. So IAM solution should be able to adapt to customers' needs when they completely move to cloud, or be able to address customers where they have no on-prem deployments and have taken cloud-first approach, right? So it should be able to address when they don't need any on-prem deployments. Like I think that's where the VMware will be moving towards, and also when they have on-prem as well as cloud needs. So what we see here is RSA Secure ID, as many of you know and use it today. So you have Authentication Manager on-prem, and you probably are using different RSA Secure ID tokens, like whether it's hardware or software token. And you are using that to protect your traditional infrastructure like VPNs, firewalls, and privileged accounts. Now with RSA Ready program, as you can see, we have strong partner ecosystem where we have integration in place with major technology vendors like VMware, like Cisco, VPN, firewall vendors. And this is the current investment customers have made in RSA Secure ID. So now what we have done is we have enabled our customers to go directly into AM, and with the simple steps, they can turn on this new cloud authentication service, which offers you a whole range of modern authentication methods. And on top of that, not only we can turn on this new cloud authentication service, but we basically link cloud and AM through a secure bridge called Identity Router. Right? So it is a very powerful because it allows you to bring two worlds seamlessly together. So as you can see, we have modern authentication, which VMware is using like push to approve, FIDO, and they are also using hardware tokens or some software tokens, and using the same identity and access management solution or platform, they're able to offer this. Right? So, so one other thing which I want to call out is that for these new modern authentication methods that you want to roll out, you can also use them with your legacy applications as well, which are on-prem applications that you have, and there is no need to modify or upgrade or reconfigure those applications. Right? So what that means is you can have push to approve, you can have biometric authentication methods you can use with your existing VPN clients or existing integrations which you have in place. In addition, all those existing users basically already who have Secure ID token, now they can also use that to authenticate to SaaS applications, PaaS applications or web applications. And same way, as I mentioned, they can use modern authentication method with your, with on-prem applications as well, right? So you are really getting, best of both worlds, where you are getting all new modern authentication methods, which are automatically backward compatible, like I mentioned, with your legacy infrastructure. All your existing token users automatically are able to use those with new cloud infrastructure. And we also have gone beyond where you can, we provide a single pane of glass for management through the existing user dashboard in AM. So you can see all your users, whether they are connecting to the cloud or on-prem. So let's take an example. An admin who is managing a mission critical application in AWS, right? So the organization wants them to use hardware token because they are privileged account users. Now they can create a policy that allows them to be able to administer AWS console, and at the same time, they will be able to manage Unix or Windows servers or workstations, which are basically deployed on-prem, right? So same user can manage both with the same authentication method. Same way, if you have, let's say, a sales operations or salesperson who is basically single sign-on, they sign in into Windows machine and they use FIDO token, but now they need to get access to a VPN to access some legacy applications. So this is something they can achieve using, hardware token or software token to get into VPN. So majority of customers have extended their current investment in AM and now use modern authentication methods offered by cloud services today. So having said that, we do have customers who have a cloud first approach. So they don't have any on-prem deployment. So this solution also works with those. They don't want anything on-prem, and they can leverage cloud authentication service without any on-prem deployment. So this is a platform which is driven by policy, and also, as you can see, offers dynamic real-time risk scoring based on behavioral analysis and machine learning. So which can be used as part of access policies to determine if user should be denied access based on the risk score, or user should be asked for additional authentication to prove they are who they claim to be. So platforms can make use of external source of risk intelligence to identify risky users and react in real time. So majority of customers have extended their current investment in AM to now use modern authentication methods offered by cloud authentication service. As you can see, we also have policy-driven access controls, and also offers dynamic real-time risk scoring based on behavioral analysis and machine learning, which can be used as part of access policy to determine if user should be denied access based on risk score, or user should be asked for additional authentication to prove they are who they claim to be. So platform can also make use of external sources of risk intelligence to identify risky users and react in real time. So risk-based authentication and behavioral analysis helps us achieve zero trust state, where you are establishing trust without putting all the burden on user to authenticate themselves. So this platform offers a high available SaaS with on-prem failover. For complex customer environments, we offer REST-based API for integration into their existing back office systems, processes, and workflows. And we supporting cloud only or hybrid deployment is what we are doing. And this is an area where we get a positive feedback from our customers and something unique we offer as part of our solution. So with the increase in remote workforce, like as Brad mentioned about, with COVID, they had to convert all their workforce. They had to enable all their workforce to work from home. There is IT is under pressure to implement passwordless technologies. And that's something we heard from VMware. So what we offer, as I mentioned to you, as part of modern authentication, we have our hardware token, software token. So this is interesting data point that RSA has been offering passwordless for past 35 years. Because when you use your traditional software tokens or hardware tokens, as an example, when you log into VPN, you don't use password, right? Instead, you use a OTP. And RSA continues to be at the forefront of new technologies and methods to eliminate the use of passwords throughout the enterprise. So we offer a wide range of authentication methods for SaaS and as well as on-prem applications. So as organizations add more and more applications, with each one requiring its own credentials, single sign-on makes it easy for users to authenticate into organization's portal once, and from there they can navigate between different applications without requiring to provide credentials again, right? So we offer single sign-on portal as part of our solution. So admins may configure access policies based on security posture of an application, where maybe a certain application needs a high level of security, and then policy may require additional authentication from a user before they get access to that application. So FIDO, which is Fast Identity Online, is something we have been supporting for many years. The primary goal of FIDO Alliance is to eliminate passwords when accessing SaaS or web-based applications. So RSA is a FIDO Alliance board member and is a co-chair for Enterprise Deployment Working Group. So RSA Cloud Authentication Service has a FIDO2 certified server, and we are supporting not only FIDO certified hardware authenticators from third-party vendors, but RSA also has a offering which is co-branded YubiKey. So we have our YubiKey for RSA Secure ID access, which we offer to our customers. So we also support embedded FIDO authenticators, like one which is part of Windows Hello, and also which is part of Android 7 OS as well. And we also have a mobile authenticate app which can also act as a FIDO authenticator over BLE, and it is currently tech review. Now, while the authentication aspect is very important, organizations are also looking to provide a passwordless experience to its workforce, and that's pretty well done. But now, what adversaries are attacking, they are not looking into the authentication workflows, but they are looking into workflows which involve credential lifecycle management, as many of these workflows are still protected using passwords only. So as they say, security is as good as your weakest link. It is equally important to offer passwordless experience for use cases which involve registration of an authenticator, like for example, FIDO key, or replacing existing token with a new one, or situation where I have misplaced my hardware token. Now, how do I get back, register my token again without requiring password? So as VMware also uses like registering their mobile devices, like for users to be able to register their mobile devices for authentication with secure ID access, and that requires no password. So when a new user is trying to register a mobile device, they are given a registration code using which they can register their authenticator with cloud authentication service, and it does not require any password. RSA also provides a self-service portal called My Page for credential management. Access to this portal is policy-driven, and user can access this by using FIDO token, or they can use identity provider. They log into identity provider and then can access through a single sign-on and get access to My Page. In case of misplaced authenticator, like I mentioned, if I misplace my FIDO key, if I misplace my phone, how do I now re-register or get access to application which I need to get access to? So we do have emergency access method using which you can get access to your self-service portal and enroll a new FIDO key or mobile device, and then you can be able to authenticate to a service you need to get access to. So none of the credential lifecycle workflows require password, and this is another key area where we need to make sure that the workflows are not dependent on password as well. So now let's take a quick look at the demo, which we will be showing to you. So this demo is showing how RSA Cloud Authentication Service is acting as an identity provider and securing access to SaaS applications like Salesforce.com. So in this demo, access policy requires user to authenticate. As you can see, now user is getting, clicking on identity provider, which is cloud authentication service. Now user basically enters their user ID. And as part of the policy, identity provider knows that there is a FIDO which is required to authenticate. So as you can see, user has plugged in the FIDO key. They're asked for PIN to authenticate to FIDO key. And then there is authentication which went in with cloud authentication service. And user is now authenticated using their FIDO key, which is already registered with the backend. And they are able to get access to Salesforce.com. Right? So this is a simple demo to show how users can access their SaaS applications like Salesforce or ServiceNow without using password and with using FIDO2 keys, which provides strong authentication. With that, let's talk about how RSA is helping their customers taking a journey to eliminate passwords and replace them with stronger authentication methods like FIDO, as we mentioned earlier. So while taking this journey, we recommend an approach where customers can become less dependent on password to become passwordless eventually. Like, as you heard from Brad, for their workflows which are being accessed from outside of the company network, there is no password use, right? So they're completely password free for those workflows. So first recommendation or step is to add more authentication methods as an additional authentication along with password while you work on eliminating passwords completely. So what that means is, let's say if you are not able to eliminate password immediately while you're working on eliminating the passwordless from your workflow, add additional authentication methods. Like Brad was talking about VMware, where adding multi-factor authentication or FIDO as well as part of that workflow will add additional security and work towards eventually replacing the password. Now, apply conditional access. Like I mentioned to you, the conditional policies, the risk intelligence as an added layer of protection. So conditional policies, example, the IP address the user is coming from, the country of origin, the geofencing, managed or unmanaged devices. So all that is something which you can add as an additional layer. Using risk-based authentication by using real-time risk score, like we discussed earlier, which is based on behavioral analysis and machine learning, are also will also give you added layer of protection. Now, make sure credential lifecycle management, which we talked earlier, are equally important. Make sure that there is no password used, and you use strong authentication methods like FIDO or other MFA methods, which do not require password. Then we have, while we understand that some applications are dependent on password, and if you are able to use additional layer of security, like additional authentication methods and risk intelligence, you may look into ways to reduce password management costs, like reducing complexity of password used or password reset policy. Make sure there are no access points which just require password, right? So that's how you can also reduce some of the cost associated to managing passwords. So these are some of the recommendations we have for our customers who are taking journey to eliminate the password. So with that, we are at the end of our session, and I really thank Brad for sharing insights on how VMware is adopting passwordless. And thank you all for listening in today. And hopefully this session was useful to all of you. Please do not forget to visit our virtual booth at Authenticate 2020. Thank you.